Okay, I want to welcome you to the show this evening. This is the Leadership Talk Show. I'm your host, Victor Bogle. I'll be with you for the next 40 minutes or so. And the topic tonight is conflict. A lot of conflict out there, so it's kind of a timely topic. Uh, where I've got some allergies this evening, so I'll itch my nose occasionally. I'm sorry, or scratch it. Uh, it's just one of those things you have to put up with this time of the year. But anyway, we're going to talk about conflict. The rules are really simple. There are two of them. We don't want to talk about people's specific names, and we don't want to talk about company names. So we talk about behaviors. We talk about examples of leadership behavior, and that's all we really need to help leaders improve. So no names, no name of companies. We also don't use this platform for any kind of grievances. There's plenty of platforms out there for you that where you might get through. This is not going to be one of them. So just those two things right up front. So let's hop into the conflict event. We're going to be talking about conflict for about 20 minutes or so, maybe 30 at the most, and then we'll see if anybody's interested in jumping on board and dialoguing with us here about anything about leadership, but most specifically, hopefully, about the topic of conflict and leaders you know or have known who have had conflict situations and how you felt they dealt with them. And we can talk about those behaviors relative to what I'm going to educate you on here in just a few minutes. I use and have for 25 or 30 years a survey program from a group called Thomas Kilmann. And Thomas Kilmann, they developed an instrument and did a lot of research. And if I'm going to select an instrument, it's going to be one where they put the research in it and they've done the statistics in the right way, and they've got a large sample size, and it's one that's proven valid and reliable and has been retested from a lot of different angles, attaching a lot of different theories to it, and it still holds up. So I just want to let you know that. So this is one of those instruments I would say, yeah, I recommend. We're going to talk about the five big leadership trait, or not leadership, personality traits. I don't know as much about that. It interests me in that it seems to be pretty valid research when you go back to the original researchers, which you want to make sure if you take the test, you take it with somebody who's got some background in that area. But it is relevant information, and it does apply to what we're doing right now. So let's talk about conflict. Let me just kind of share my screen with you a little bit here. We'll go over here, get this up, get into here. Yeah, there we go. There's a familiar face. I'm sorry about my nose, and it just really gets to me. But if we can get through that part of it, what I'm saying really here, and what I'm pointing to, is the idea you don't live alone in this world, and particularly if you're in business or any kind of group organization where you're working. So I just want to let you know you're going to experience conflict. So how you handle that conflict often says a lot about your leadership to the people who are working for you and working around you. So let's just take a moment and kind of get a sense of what we think leadership might be as defined by Thomas and Kilmann.
Conflict happens everywhere. At home, with your parents, siblings, kids, at work with coworkers or bosses, on Facebook. We all deal with conflict, from the little arguments or disagreements to screaming, office supply throwing fights that cause severe stress. And unless you work alone in a cave, which is not likely, conflict will affect your work at some time or another. In the U.S., conflict is estimated to cost employers well over $1 billion every year. Conflict happens everywhere, however. It's completely natural. It's the result of miscommunication, differences in opinion or perspective, different objectives, or limited resources. So if we can't completely avoid conflict in our lives, how do we make the best of these inevitable situations? By being more aware. First, everyone is different. No two individuals are exactly alike. Even those genetically identical twins that look exactly alike won't have the same thoughts, feelings, personality traits, and more. Knowing this is the first step to taming that big scary monster that is conflict. Second, though everyone is different, there's a pattern to how most people typically handle conflict. This is called your conflict handling mode or conflict resolution style. There's a tool called the TKI, the Thomas Kilmann Conflict Mode Instrument, that illustrates these 5 conflict resolution styles in detail. Every conflict resolution style has different degrees of assertiveness and cooperativeness. In other words, how much you're trying to satisfy your own concerns and how much you're trying to satisfy your teammates' concerns. You can map out these 5 styles: competing, collaborating, compromising, avoiding, and accommodating, based on degrees of assertiveness and cooperativeness. None of the styles are better than any other. They are just different. Third, know your style. Though we all use different styles at different times, most people typically have 1 or 2 styles that they use most of the time. From a combination of personality, nature, upbringing, culture, work environment, and the dozens of different variations that make you who you are, you have learned that 1 or 2 of these styles are the most comfortable for you. Being aware of how you act when in conflict will help you along your journey to mastering the conflict monster. Fourth, learn the other styles and how to use them. Some conflict styles are better used than others for different situations. Maybe your natural conflict resolution style is collaborating, but in a work situation, your project involving multiple other departments is on a tight deadline and you don't have time to sit down with every person on the team to discuss every idea they have for the best way to finish the project. If you know what the other conflict handling styles are and which works best for situations with certain qualities, you can wisely choose to flex your own style to best fit the situation.
Okay, so there you have a general sense of Thomas and Kilmann's perspective on conflict, and in fact, they say that no one style is the best, but the reality from the business side is, um, if you can use a collaborative style, I find that that has been a lot more productive and kind of fits in with the other kinds of things we've talked about. You know, we've talked about cultures, values, belief systems, attitudes, and how those deep seated core values affect how you think and believe and act and behave. And we've talked about power bases, the referent expert power base. It's highly admired and creates an inspirational workforce versus the coercive, somewhat authoritarian and dictatorial leadership style. Uh, and we talked about how if you don't have ethics and you don't have morals underpinning all of that, that your decision processes may alter and not come off the way that you would like for them to with employees. We talked about the ability to communicate interpersonally effectively and the idea that, how you use your power base and how you believe in your ethics and morals and how you communicate can impact people's trust in you. Trust is premised on the balance of harm, whether one person can do another person more harm. That's when you get distrust. When it's balanced, you have more trust. And of course, we talked about roles. And if you heard that video, it said that basically style like competing style, which is very assertive and unbalanced towards being uncooperative, that would be a very directive and authoritarian leader. But in fact, you might see that as necessary as a way to solve a particular conflict situation if you happen to be in the role of a military officer in a combat situation, or even first responders like law enforcement officers who have to go out there and make quick decisions and don't really have time to get a group of people together to decide whether that decision is popular or not, or the best decision for that matter. And if it's not, what you could do then is revert from the competing conflict style to the collaborative style and sort of discuss what happened to see if you could prevent it from happening again if it didn't go quite right. So there's some examples of how what we've already learned in our previous lessons impacts how you're going to resolve conflicts, your conflict mode, if you will, from that standpoint. But there's also personality traits, which we haven't discussed, but there are a couple I'd like to discuss. One is agreeableness. So if you're thinking of these two on opposite ends of a scale, you have agreeableness, and this is a personality that has altruism, kindness, affection, and they're pro-social behaviors, and people who are high in agreeableness, they tend to have a great deal of interest in other people, care about others. They can feel empathy for others. They enjoy helping and contributing to the happiness and productivity of others. They listen to them. They bring them into discussions. They listen to what they have to say. So you can see where that might be someone who would lean towards a collaborative leadership style as their primary mode. Now, if you talk about neuroticism, this is a leader who is characterized by a lot of times by they're not happy, they're moody, they're emotional. A lot of times they have emotional instability. The individuals are high in mood swings and anxiety sets in a lot. They're irritable. And individuals who are high in neuroticism tend to experience a lot of stress, worry about different things all the time. They get upset easily. They experience dramatic shifts in mood from very excited and exuberant to really depressed. And then they feel anxious a lot. Have a lot of anxiety in their life. So you can see where this person may not be very cooperative in their conflict management style and very aggressive. That would be competing. And that's a very dictatorial, authoritarian kind of leader who, neurotic on the far end of this neurotic scale is probably narcissism, very self-centered, controlling, and that kind of stuff. So uh, we have those things. You can see how all of this tends to play, all that we've talked about that you work through, you understand about yourself, can play in your ability to control conflict, a very, very key role for leadership. But let's find out a little more about each of these 5 personalities.
This is a short presentation about managing conflict and the Thomas Kilmann Conflict Mode instrument. Thomas and Kilmann identified a conflict handling grid with 5 management styles based on 2 dimensions, assertiveness and cooperation. In this instance, assertiveness is the level of motivation of the individual to achieve their own goals and objectives, whilst the cooperation axis is about the willingness of the individual to allow the other party to achieve their goals or objectives. There are 5 key styles, and these are avoiding, competing, accommodating, compromising, and collaborating. The avoiding style is low on both cooperative and assertiveness. Usually the original problem is not directly addressed or resolved. There is a sense of ignore it and it will go away. It can be useful when an issue is trivial and may burn out of its own accord, or it is likely to have a very short lifespan. It can also be an option when tackling the problem in a more assertive way might cause more disruption than it resolves. This strategy can also allow for cooling off periods. However, avoidance can cause significant problems in the longer term, as a long-running issue is likely to build up resistance and potential resentment over time. The competing style is characterized by high assertiveness and low cooperation, with the participants seeking to reach their preferred outcomes at the expense of other individuals. This approach can be appropriate when quick, decisive action is required, such as emergencies. However, continued use of this style of resolution is going to create resentment in the longer term. The accommodating style includes a high degree of cooperation. A person using this style will put aside their own goals in favour of the other person's. This behaviour is appropriate when they realise that their needs are less than the other person's, or when they realise that they have been in the wrong. However, taking this to extreme, this could be a lose-win situation. The compromising style occurs where there are equal levels of cooperation and assertiveness at a moderate level. This can be used where there is a need to find a timely solution and both parties have similar goals. It can also be used where the outcome has moderate or little impact. It should not be used as a long-term solution, however, as it frequently masks stronger underlying issues. The collaborating strategy is high on both the assertiveness and cooperation scales and is similar to a win-win scenario. Both sides creatively work towards a solution which meets the objectives and goals of all persons involved. And whilst this can create an ideal outcome, it can be a complex and time-consuming process to achieve. Each of these styles can be used in the right situation, and it is a question of finding that right situation and the right style to use. So here are some questions. Which is your preferred style and why? When have you used one of these styles in the past? What might you have done differently? What will you do next time? When and how might you use these styles in the future? This is a short presentation about managing conflict and the Thomas Kilmann Conflict Mode instrument. Thomas and Kilmann identified a conflict handling grid with 5 management styles based on 2 dimensions, assertiveness and cooperation. In this instance, assertiveness is the level of motivation of the individual to achieve their own goals and objectives, whilst the cooperation axis is about the willingness of the individual to allow the other party to achieve their goals or objectives. There are 5 key styles, and these are avoiding, competing, accommodating, compromising, and collaborating. The avoiding style is low on both cooperative and assertiveness. Usually the original problem is not directly addressed or resolved. There is a sense of ignore it and it will go away. It can be useful when an issue is trivial and may burn out of its own accord, or it is likely to have a very short lifespan. It can also be an option when tackling the problem in a more assertive way might cause more disruption than it resolves. This strategy can also allow for cooling off periods. However, avoidance can cause significant problems in the longer term, as a long-running issue is likely to build up resistance and potential resentment over time. The competing style is characterized by high assertiveness and low cooperation, with the participants seeking to reach their preferred outcomes at the expense of other individuals. This approach can be appropriate when quick, decisive action is required, such as emergencies. However, continued use of this style of resolution is going to create resentment in the longer term. The accommodating style includes a high degree of cooperation. A person using this style will put aside their own goals in favour of the other person's. This behaviour is appropriate when they realize that their needs are less than the other person's, or when they realize that they have been in the wrong. However, taking this to extreme, this could be a lose-win situation. The compromising style occurs where there are equal levels of cooperation and assertiveness at a moderate level. This can be used where there is a need to find a timely solution and both parties have similar goals. It can also be used where the outcome has moderate or little impact. It should not be used as a long-term solution, however, as it frequently masks stronger underlying issues. The collaborating strategy is high on both the assertiveness and cooperation scales and is similar to a win-win scenario. Both sides creatively work towards a solution which meets the objectives and goals of all persons involved. And whilst this can create an ideal outcome, it can be a complex and time-consuming process to achieve. Each of these styles can be used in the right situation, and it is a question of finding that right situation and the right style to use. So here are some questions. Which is your preferred style and why? When have you used one of these styles in the past? What might you have done differently? What will you do next time? When and how might you use these styles in the future?
So let me just say at this point that those are the styles, and they are very, very effective at helping people understand where they are and how they manage conflict, and in fact how people relate to them. Now, just a couple of things about the instruments themselves. They are available. For both of these, the Big Five personality traits and Thomas Kilmann instruments, both have certified consultants that operate them. A lot of them have online programs. So I would just caution you to make sure you're selecting one that is a quality distributor of the instrument and will provide you a good quality feedback report from each of those. Now, I have put one here. I don't necessarily recommend this site or actually even what they're professing here. However, it is a free opportunity to take the test to get a feel for what it's like. And if you're comfortable with what you're seeing, you feel like it's valid, then you can certainly use it. Now, all you have to do is go ahead and apply to get into the group so you can get to it, and then you can get to the free instrument there. And it's a pretty good one. I would say you can learn something from it. So that is there. If you go online to the Thomas Kilmann side, which I will also put this link in the group, you can actually go ahead and get a survey. And here's a sample of what you'll see when you get back, after you take the report and you get it back. I so much apologize for my allergy attack this evening. You just can't plan those out. Here you see they go into sort of giving you a brief explanation like you just heard. They then go into a deeper explanation like you heard in this last video of each of the styles. Then they list your style out, the one that you have a preference for. In this case, this sample person would have a preference for collaborating. Now, you need to understand if you happen to have a strong competing and low collaboration and you want to move to collaboration, you want to take this in a way that shows who you really are right now. This is for you. You don't have, your boss isn't seeing it or anybody else, so you can answer it honestly. And that's important because if you know where you actually stand, you know the kinds of behaviors you would like to have you can actually make the changes that get there. If you try to fake this out, it may say something that's not real and it's not going to work for you. So be honest on your assessment. It provides interpretation of your score. It takes each of these categories, breaks it down in the uses of collaborating, the style, the contribution that it makes when you use it, some questions you need to ask, signs of overuse, underuse, etc. It does that for each of the styles. Okay, so you can see that instrument, and here you can sign up on this website for the personality test, the 5 personality styles. You can actually take the test on here. I think this is a charged instrument. If you're paying for it, at least you know you're getting a pretty good quality product for the most part. Now, the one we have that's free on the website, if you like that one, you may decide to take this one and see if, you get a better product out of the report, because the other one's going to be a very brief summary report because it's free. So those are some of the things I wanted to share with you that we have available on the websites there. Yeah, by the way, if you go back into let's just see, back into my groove, one of the things that I encourage you to do is sign up. Ask your questions here under discussion. Start a discussion. I'll respond to that. Other people will respond to that. You can respond back. You can actually have a pretty good dialogue right in here, for example, on how to use this effectively, etc., or how to do anything on anything we've talked about from leadership effectively. It's also a place where you can message me and ask to get a little bit of time one-on-one with me, and we can use this particular process right here to bring you into the program and have a face-to-face dialogue about what you're wanting to know about from that standpoint. So we don't seem to have anybody on here who's really jumped on with us, and my nose is bothering, so I think I'll probably end this fairly quickly. This is an opportunity to understand how to manage conflicts. It's not just business. I mean, this will work in your personal life. It'll, if you think about all of the debate and the conflict that's happening on Twitter and Facebook, you can literally learn about this stuff, see some of the responses, and you're going to be able to categorize people into those responses, and they're going to be able to you'll be able to practice actually understanding them because you're watching the behavior of the person on Twitter or Facebook. You can go, this is a neurotic, and this is a person who's a little neurotic, and he's using a highly competing conflict style. He's got no room for discussion here, and then you'll find people on there that say, look, I understand what you're saying, but have you thought about this? That's more of a collaborative person who's probably on the agreeableness side of that personality trait. So that's how you use this stuff. If you can become proficient in that, you can actually see how your people are responding who work for you. And by the way, if you're an employee, you'll be able to understand the same stuff and use it to identify some issues about your boss. And then you can reinforce when he's doing the right stuff, and just don't say anything when he's doing the bad stuff. And you're going to find that you might begin to start making some changes in your leader. And they may not even know you're doing it from that standpoint. So there's why I encourage employees to get involved in leadership training. It's stuff you can use on an ongoing basis at some point in your life. If you're not a leader at your work, you might be a leader in your church or in the school environment or a club or something like that. So just some information for you on those topic areas. I'm hoping, let's see here. Yeah, we're pretty close to time here. I'm hoping that you will take the opportunity to share this with others. I'll be posting it, and I'll post a lot of those links to those various instruments and stuff into the group on a group page. You can jump in there. When you request to get in, you're going to get asked 3 questions that I have found extremely effective in helping people come to understand themselves. The first question, and I don't take credit for this, this is my mentor, my consulting mentor's set of questions we used to use, and I just continue to use them after I retired and did some consulting on my own. But the first question is what do you like about your boss? And then the second one is, what don't you like about your boss? And the third one is, if you could change something about your boss, what would that one thing be you would change? Okay. And we used to give that to the boss, and we used to give it to the employees, and we put them in separate rooms, and they would answer those questions. Then we would bring them back together, and they would share their answers. So I would say to you, before you get into doing that, you better be extreme. In fact, I would recommend you get a professional in there who knows how to consult in this area, like myself. Because about 98% of the time, it's very positive feedback and people enjoy doing it. They have a lot of fun with it. 2% of the time, they don't. And it is a real train wreck when they don't. So you really, really, really need to know how to handle that, or you can have some really bad stuff going on. So I would say to you this, I hope you get some information. I very much apologize for the allergies and all that kind of stuff, but nothing I can do about that. I do want you to gain some information, but I hope we pulled some of this stuff from the past collectively together so you can see a path forward, how we're going to use that. Next week, we're going to talk about leadership development. We'll get deeper into what you need to look for in assessments, what kind of assessments, and that you should have some sort of model to use to help yourself develop. And so we'll cover a lot of that kind of information. Until then, I hope you have a great week and a great weekend, and try to put some of this to work. You don't necessarily have to go out and make radical changes with it. You can learn a little bit. Like I say, go on Twitter, watch what's going on, try to place particular tweets in conflict mode categories and learn a little bit about it. Okay, until then, I hope you have a good evening. I will see you later.